This is Con Carne, a Q101 podcast, and Con Carne is presented by Alex Ross Art. You can visit Alex Ross on YouTube at the Alex Ross Art, or just go to alexrossart.com.
It's Con Carne. Let's eat in the car. It's Con Carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Alstyne.
I'm looking to build a team. On the morning of Sunday, May 19th, me, along with my team, the Avengers, we're going to take the stairs of Soldier Field in Chicago. It's all part of the Chicago Fight for Air Climb, presented by United Healthcare. It's something I'm doing along with the American Lung Association. The idea being we want to raise awareness and money to end lung disease. If you want to sign up, be part of the team, take on Soldier Field, go to fightforairclimb.org/Chicagoland. And besides the contribution to the American Lung Association, besides the healthy aspects, how cool would it be to kind of get that perspective of Soldier Field for a non-game, non-concert day? fightforairclimb.org/Chicagoland. A smart home connects virtually all the technology in your home. With an easy automation installed smart home system, you and your family can control nearly every device and system in the house in ways that are easy and, yes, fun to use. Transform your living space with cutting-edge home automation. Experience seamless control over audio, video, lighting, climate, security, and more. Embrace the future of smart living. Your home, your rules. Go right to my guy Dan. My guy Dan has his cell phone at the ready. It's in his back pocket. When you call this number, his back pocket is going to vibrate, and he'll pick it up and say, "Hello, I'm Dan. Let me tell you about easy automation." 630-730-3728. 630-730-3728. That's my guy Dan. Not in the car for this one, going virtual, because my guest is overseas. You know his guitar leads and licks probably as well as you know some of your favorite lyrics. His time with Bush coincided with the ascension and domination of alternative music in the mainstream. The first four Bush albums, 16 Stone, Razorblade Suitcase, The Science of Things, Golden State, huge moments, one and all. Nigel Pulsford, my guest on Con Carne. Nigel, it's lovely to see you, and it's lunchtime where you are, right?
That's right, yeah, it's 1 o'clock here.
What's for lunch?
It was a piece of toast. I just had it. It was very exciting.
That is exciting. So I think for those who don't know, you put out what I think many will consider a surprising, also highly listenable album called Losing Track. I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about Bush, which it was such a big part of your life and our lives through the 1990s. But let's talk a little bit about Losing Track, because for those coming into it cold, it doesn't sound like the music we best know you for. It's jazzy. It's maybe proggy. In many respects, it's like an unheard movie score. How long had this been germinating?
Oh, some of that stuff was written started, I say, probably in about 2000. So the really long piece was started then. Actually, that was started in Nashville when I did another solo album in 98, but it started off as a little acoustic ditty, and then it sort of became longer and more somber over the years. So a lot of that was back then, but this is sort of more, I guess, the music I listen to, or part of the music I listen to. I've got also very wide tastes. I didn't really listen to grunge as such. I liked Mudhoney and Nirvana, but I wasn't, deep into the Seattle world. I like Jesus Lizard and, Big Black and things, a lot of sort of left of field stuff.
No, are you just pandering to the fact that this is a Chicago podcast by name dropping the Jesus Lizard and Big Black?
Well, I could name drop more. Silkworm. I mean, yeah. I mean, we could keep going. So, to be suddenly successful as part of a movement, having come from London, was wonderful, but a wonderful surprise, because we didn't know where we'd fit in, or if we'd fit in at all. It was all good. And so with my album, I guess I've been working on it on and off for sort of 20 odd years. And every few years I revisit some of the songs and redo them. And then, just as I learned more about writing and arranging and just kept going back to it until I sort of came to where it ended up. Some stuff was fresh about 5 years ago when I did all the drums, got a drummer in and we worked together on it. But a lot of it, I say, was written 20 years ago. It's in 2000, I think I started it, and just as ideas and songs, and some of them had words and some were instrumental, and then gradually they just took on a life of their own. There goes my doorbell. I don't know if you can hear that.
I can hear that.
Hopefully someone's answering it. So it just evolved over time, and I just thought, well, you know what? It's an honest reflection of what I seem to like. And I was surprised how things came out, and I could hear some, because I mainly listen to jazz these days. So I could hear a lot of the jazz that I listen to coming out. But even things like the way Steely Dan used jazz or things like that, I could hear in the arrangements, and maybe a bit of Frank Zappa in there or something as well. And then obviously a bit of loud guitar occasionally. But it was more about learning how to arrange horns and things like that, which took the time. A lot of the guitars were just first takes, because I can sort of do that. That's my thing. And I can and so I perhaps didn't spend quite as long on that as I should have, because I was just happy to get it down so I could get back to the stuff I didn't know how to do properly, if you know what I mean. Yeah, does that make sense?
It does. And as far as the guitar goes, I think if someone were looking for, I don't know, a bridge to what they know of Nigel past, maybe Gentleman's Third is a good entry point for them.
Possibly. I mean, that's more of I suppose that's a lilting sort of guitar piece where I just thought, well, let's do a guitar track, as opposed to, guitars buried under a horn sort of thing. But I think, the link to my past is the last chord of the album, which is that big chord right at the very end. That's
endings, literally the album.
Yeah, literally the end of the album. And it's that big chord at the end. And that's sort of where I was. And, it's a sort of, a lot of it is like influenced by people like Slint, I guess, just with a very minimal guitar thing. And then I just elaborated all. So I had bare bones of things. And then I learned, I've been used to arranging strings, and I've done it for other people as well as in Bush. But I'd never done horns. And I suddenly went, well, let's have a go. And I really like the way the band used horns on music from Big Pink and the band, in which they were sort of quite slightly shambolic, like a New Orleans funeral band. So that was my initial approach. And then I discovered, oh, this is fun. And I started, developing it and maybe trying to incorporate some of the jazz I knew in a very limited way, but in a way I enjoyed. And, if it sounded too easy, I would redo it until it didn't sound, if it was too easy, I would think, hang on, I should be able to do this better. So so I was there a lot, tearing the last of my hair out,
Whenever I hear a sax doing cool stuff in a song, I flash back to David Bowie. His music was really the first place I ever heard a sax in cool, art-forward rock and roll.
Sure.
And I'm guessing Bowie was a part of your...
Oh, hugely. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm so old. I saw him on the stage tour when I was at school.
Like 1978?
I guess, 78. Yeah, it must be 78, 79. And that was amazing. So, I was really lucky. I saw Earth, Wind and Fire as well about a couple of months earlier or a couple of months later at the same place in just outside Birmingham. So, and they were a big influence on me as well. I love Earth, Wind and Fire still, and still listen to them.
What was the first concert you ever went to? What was the first concert you ever went to?
Oh, well, I was very lucky. I have a big sister, Jan, who's also a musician who played with Cyndi Lauper and the Thompson Twins and various things, and lived in the States for years. And she took me to see Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni Mitchell, that band at Wembley Stadium when I was 13. Yeah, it was incredible. Blew my mind, as they say.
Oh, I bet. My first show was the Bee Gees at the Chicago Stadium.
Excellent. Well, I bet that was good.
I was a kid. It was my first stadium show. Anything you see
wow.
in a stadium when you're that age is, mind blowing.
Yeah, of course.
So as far as you talked about writing the songs, and some had lyrics, some didn't. How do you title a song without lyrics? I mean, I can guess based on some of the titles here that they describe the struggles in writing them. No longer a ballad, purged dirge.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Purge Dirge was a song I'd written with this girl singer, a very slow, sort of chromatic descending thing, and a bit dirgy. So I changed the time signature, fiddled around with it, and removed the dirge, I suppose, purged it of the dirge. So that's where, that really is literal. And the one about sunset is remembering driving down Sunset towards the sea, in LA. Some of them are just silly titles, I guess, that just stuck with them, working titles. And then suddenly it was like, maybe the song becomes the title once you've got the title, if you know what I mean. You start to think of it in that way. And Endings is just a sort of sad song. It's about, I saw it as a real journey. It's uplifting bits and then somber bits and then, tangents off and right. So that was Endings. It's sort of it's about ending, things end, because in life things end and they're quite sad. So that, but you have the up and the down of the, meeting and then ending,
I love that. And I talk about this a lot, the value of album sequencing, like really threading that journey from start to finish and having like a clear really vision. Because especially, this, we live in a world where everything is so a la carte. You can get whatever song you want on demand, but to sit down and have that immersive start to finish journey, I think is so important. I mean, that's the complete vision.
Even though people don't listen like that anymore, I think you still have to do it. We used to spend, in various bands over the years, we just spent ages just trying to get the sequence right and making sure the keys aren't the same and the tempo isn't too similar and all that sort of stuff, and trying to finish with having a side one that finishes slightly downbeat, which is what I did with this, and then up down. It's great, that journey, I think. Unfortunately, I don't think many people listen to things like that anymore.
I'm hopeful in that I have two children. One's teenage, one is early 20s, and they both listen to records now. So I'm hopeful that maybe that's changing back. And
records are really popular again. So that's, for sure.
Maybe it's time to put away the phone and just listen.
Well, the phone's so convenient, when I'm in my car now, because my car doesn't have a CD player.
Right.
So I have to have the streaming thing going. So that's, which is okay. But I like records. I still buy records. I'm dreading moving. So I've got cart all these boxes and boxes of records around. But, I love it because you stick a CD on or stream something, you can go in and out of the room 100 times and it doesn't matter. But if you put a record on it, you tend to sort of stay in one place and listen to it. You
don't want to re-cue it. You don't want to advance through it. And you're kind of locked in for that 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, the good songs and the bad songs.
Yeah, that's perfect. Occasionally you flip, might skip one, but you don't really, because it's just part of the deal.
Right. Going back to Purge Dirge, when I first heard that song, it came across as kind of like your own version of a Bond theme.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, because what it was with that, I had the backing track and I'd sort of changed the time signature and messed around with it. And then I got I bought an old 50s Gibson Les Paul Special. And it had such a lovely sound, but it wasn't perfect, but it just had a really characterful sound. So I thought, and I started playing along, and suddenly that came out. The melody came out from the guitar, and turned it into that sort of Bondy sort of thing. And then, the real star of the album, I think, is the drummer, Rob Bryan, who's a sort of West Country guy, but who's played with. He was over in the States playing with Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees recently. He's just an incredible drummer, and I would say to him what I had in mind, or I'd like him to play like Tony Williams, who played with Miles in the 60s or whatever. And he would just be able to do it. Amazing. So then I went back and redid a lot of what had been to accent the drums, because they were so good. And, I didn't want the drummers to overshadow me completely. I had to sort of try and grab a bit back.
All right, we'll get right back to Nigel Pulsford. This is what we call a mid-roll. This coming May 19th, it's a Sunday morning. It's the Chicago Fight for Air Climb at Soldier Field. We're going to climb it. We're going to take it on, going up and down the stands. And man, I've always wanted to do something like this when there isn't a game or a concert going on at Soldier Field. We're going to get in there and we're going to support the fight for air climb to help raise awareness and money to end lung disease. You can be part of my team. You can donate to the American Lung Association by going to fightforairclimb.org/Chicagoland. You know, in the 10 or 15 minutes we've been talking so far, the one thing that comes out loud and clear about you, I mean, you're such a fan of music, a student of music.
Yeah, I mean, musicians, I'm always amazed when musicians don't know much about music. I'm really suspicious of them because I think then it's a career move as opposed to a passion and a love, you know? I mean, all I wanted to be when I was about 12 was a musician. I suddenly read something in a paper or something and went, yeah, that's for me. That's for me. And so then I got a guitar and, you know, the journey began and it became obsessive, you know, and still sort of is. I mean, family gets in the way, unfortunately, but
yeah, adult life, these things happen.
Yeah.
So jumping back to how we first came to know you, I've got to ask the obvious question. Are things still acrimonious with you and Gavin Rossdale?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Gavin in some time. I wouldn't say they're acrimonious. They're non-existent. I'd say, you know, there's no. I mean, it's, you know, it's what it is. It's fine. Yeah.
Well, I remember thinking about those days in the 90s. I was working at Q101 in Chicago, and I remember the first time we got a hold of 16 Stone, it was a really poorly dubbed cassette. Maybe Rob Kane sent it to the radio station, like it was out of phase. But back in the days before the internet, like there was such a rush to get songs on the radio. It's like we didn't have time to get a CD. So I remember putting everything in, like dubbing it off cassette, putting it onto a cart, and playing it on the air back then until we got a proper version of that. That was that got you out of the gates so quickly. Was that first album cycle a blur for you?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it all happened so quickly. I mean, lots of very, very memorable things. But yeah, once we, you know, I mean, the initial promo and stuff in New York was great in Central Park and things like that. I remember all that sort of stuff. And then when we started touring, it just suddenly, yes, it was, you know, I was trying to think about things earlier today about it and just trying to think, God, what do I remember? You know, and it is, as you say, it's a blur, but it was a really exciting blur. And, you know, we were really lucky. We couldn't believe it was happening. And I do remember getting to San Francisco on one of the tours that year and suddenly lying in bed and going, God, we've made it. Actually stopping for a moment and just pausing and thinking, wow, this is what I always dreamed of doing. And I'm actually doing it, you know, because often you don't even have time to reflect. Right. And don't quite realize because you're just moving so quickly all the time and you're busy and tired. And I mean, it was just like, wow, this is thrilling. And it was lovely. You know, suddenly we were in a country where I remember we played when we first came over in January, I guess January 95 to do some, or maybe just before, we had to do an install at Tower Records on Long Island. So we thought there'd be no one there. And then we were doing a gig at CBGB's. Again, we thought there'd be no one there. So we go to the install signing, and there were queues of people outside. And we're like, huh? And then we go to CBGB's, and people who weren't our friends were singing along to our songs. Because normally it's only people who are your mates who know the words. And it was like incredible, you know, suddenly. And then that went on, and we go somewhere new all the time, and people will be pleased to see us. And it's such a lovely feeling to go somewhere where you don't know anyone, and all these people you don't know are really pleased and happy to see you and know who you are. It's wonderful. You know, it's like a gift. You know, sure. It doesn't happen to many people, you know.
And what a year. I mean, I think the first time I saw Bush was at the Q101 Jamboree that year. Here is a statement of what alternative radio and pop culture was like at the time. You look at this lineup in the modern day, and there's no way to look at it and not say, holy shit. It was Bush, it was Collective Soul, Sponge, The Flaming Lips, Duran, Faith No More, Sheryl Crow.
I remember this night. Yeah.
KMFDM and the Stone Roses.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I remember the Duran thing because they were headlining.
Right.
That's right. We went out to see them and loads of fat people came in to mobbed us when we went out to go and watch them. It was very exciting.
I love bills and festivals like that where no two bands sound alike. and you're getting that breadth of cultural experience. I loved that moment.
Oh God, I remember. Yes, I do remember that. And I remember someone said, you should go on the Faith in the More bus. It smells so bad. And it's like, just they're the little things I remember just from, when you did the lineup, I think we were all on that little circuit that year of doing radio shows together. So, and they were great as Faith in the More were great that night, I seem to remember as well.
Thinking of all the times you've been to Chicago, I mean, this has always been a pretty warm city for you. What's your reflection on Chicago?
Oh, it's one of my favorite places in the States, definitely to come. And it's nice because we got friends there. We had friends there. So every time we came in, we'd see Steve Albini because he was obviously Chicagoan and we were good friends with Steve. People from Silkworm, the Veruca Salt girls would often show up and say hello because we became friendly with them when we toured. And just a really nice place. I had a really fantastic Italian meal there once. I remember clearly, just off the Golden Mile, and I love Chicago was one of those places. Our security guy Bill, who's unfortunately no longer with us, he was from Chicago, and so it resonated with us. It was fun.
Speaking about Steve Albini, Razorblade Suitcase debuted at #1. Thinking about you taking inventory around the time of 16 Stone, like, oh, we made it. Next album. #1 I mean, these are things that once in a lifetime. Oh my God, I can't imagine what that was like.
That was incredible. Yeah, I mean, again, because we'd already experienced a bit of it. Obviously, we were more prepared in a sense, but we hoped it might get to #1 because we've been told by the record company that it might. But of course, when it happens, it's like something else. It was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's just, mind-blowing again.
And the album seemed like the right approach and right statement for the band to make at that time.
I think so, because we'd been touring a lot, so we were much better live than we had been. And so to record us live seemed the logical step. And I think I haven't heard it for a while, but I know it sounds fantastic. A lot of it sounds really good. I mean, some of the songs were, sort of rehearsed up on tour in the States. And, and it was great working with Steve because we were all scared to death of him at first because he had such a reputation. And then, of course, he's just a really sweet guy. But, and you ask him what he thinks, and it'll, usually all it is, well, maybe you guys should go and rehearse a bit more. If you haven't quite worked out what you're doing, because you'd be asking for, how does it sound? And he said, well, it sounds like you need to rehearse. And that was all, all he'd pretty much ever offer. But he would make everything sound amazing. Yeah. I think, anyway, I mean, sort of a genius in the studio.
And then around the time of The Science of Things, culture had shifted. I mean, the days of KMFDM, Sheryl Crow, and Stone Roses on the same bill had given, just popular culture in general had changed. Yeah. What was that kind of turn of the century vibe? Like Science of Things in Golden State in particular, that period.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird because we'd sort of been away and then we'd had a falling out with a record company and there's some nonsense going on. The sharks were circling and God knows what was going on. So we were away for a bit longer than we should have been. And while we were away, the whole Limp Bizkit, the sort of jock rock thing happened, and music changed dramatically, and we sort of fell out of favor a bit, I guess, which, is understandable. And we played at Woodstock and closed the first night, and it was mayhem. It wasn't the moshing had suddenly become much more intense and serious and people getting hurt and lots of nasty things going on. So it was quite a shock to come back and, having been away probably for a year. And as you say, everything had changed, and Korn and Limp Bizkit were the, Rage. I mean, Rage had gone by then, I guess. But that it was really sort of. I thought we sounded like the bloody Eagles at Woodstock compared to everyone else, because everyone else was so so stern, and we sounded quite sort of laid back. I thought in a strange way, So that's what we came back to, and then we sort of had to start again, I suppose, which we sort of did, touring in a smaller way again.
And if you were the Eagles at Woodstock, that would make you Joe Walsh. Not a bad place to be.
That'd be okay. I like Joe. He's great. He's one of my heroes growing up.
So Will you go back to rock? I mean, I know you're kind of scratching the jazz itch now. Will you go back to doing something rock?
Well, I've been doing another, sort of trying to do another album, because the problem with doing this, releasing Losing Track, it's very hard to promote without paying lots of musicians to come and do it. So I thought, well, I'm halfway through at the moment of song-based album. And I thought, well, if I can get the courage up to go and do it, I'll go out and play those songs, and maybe and that'll be a way of promoting Losing Track, as well as this new thing, which is easier to present. So I can do that with a 4-piece band sort of thing. So I might do, I enjoy playing rock when I do, I really enjoy it. It's my thing. The jazz thing is sort of a passion that I'm not, there's lots of much better jazz players out there. So I quite like the whole arranging side of it, perhaps, and writing side more than, playing for 20 minutes, playing a solo for 20 minutes. And, the thing with jazz is, unless you're good, it sounds so boring. You go and see someone who isn't very good playing for 10 minutes, taking a 10-minute solo, and it's like, if it's not John Coltrane or who, they need to be really good to hold your interest. So I'm not there, unfortunately.
It's interesting. I've always wanted to know more about jazz, but I never had that entry point. So listening to you talk about it, like, I never had that introduction. I'm good on rock, punk rock, etc. I never had that jazz introduction, and it's something I'm coming to later in life. Did you have an interest in jazz?
My dad liked jazz, but more big band type of jazz. And he took me to see Woody Herman and a couple of the guys. And my mum was a really good pianist, and she played Gershwin and things like that, and some really lovely jazz. And then when I was about 18, I sort of met some friends who were I thought were very cool, and a guitar player, and they had all this incredible blue note jazz from the 50s and 60s. And they just opened. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it seemed like a slightly cooler alternative to what my dad was listening to, if you know what I mean.
For sure.
So that's when I started, and so it was always there, but the rock thing took over because I was playing in other bands and stuff, and that was clearly my path. But it was always something I would listen to when I could. And I remember playing Thelonious Monk on the band bus quite often in the late 90s, trying to get, and people appreciated it. It's not particularly liking it maybe that much, I suppose.
So Losing Track is the album we've been talking about.
Yeah.
We can listen to it on Bandcamp.
Yeah, Bandcamp, on Spotify and Cuba, all the streamers have got it. I haven't released it physically. I sort of I haven't actually promoted it. I just sort of got it out there, so it's gone, it's done, so I can leave it alone, if you know what I mean. And I just have been rather bad at promoting it, so I should really do some promotion.
Well, you've been really good about it today.
Yeah, no, it's fun to talk about it. I'm happy if anyone's interested. I was hoping people would be more interested, but I guess,
it's so hard to cut through with anything. And
sure.
People's attention spans, I think, especially post-COVID, are fractions of what they once were.
Oh, yeah, very much so. So, I'll how do you do it without a record company is always a bit of a challenge. And I guess it's all changed as well since, I was doing it with.
Oh, yeah, the rules are completely upended and different.
Yeah, so I've got no idea how to approach it. So that's maybe doing a few gigs is possibly the only way.
Well, from one music fan to another, I appreciate you chatting. I love what you've done here, and you've always been one to watch. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Oh, no, that's very kind. Thank you for talking to me. Wonderful.
He's a music guy. I love him. Nigel Pulsford on Con Carne. Just want to remind you again, the Chicago Fight for Air Climb is happening on Sunday, May 19th. We're doing it first thing in the morning that day as we take on Soldier Field. Be part of the team. Get yourself registered by going to fightforairclimb.org/Chicagoland. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.